And we want to do our part, and we want to love people, and we want to give them coffee and help them accomplish whatever their goal is.
Right.
That's what we want to do. But how do we do that well? I don't know. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Vagrant Coffee HustleCast. Today's episode is going to be a little bit different. There's a lot of different things going on in the world, and we want to talk about business and social responsibility and social justice initiatives and those sort of things. But just so you know what we're drinking today, we're drinking new coffee. It's our Colombia Manos de Mujeres. It's new. You can find it online at our website, vagrantcoffee.com, or you can go to the stores. It's got notes of roasted honey nut and red chai. It's a very medium body coffee, like a lot of Colombians are, but it's really good. So that's what we're drinking today.
And speaking of social justice issues, it happens to be an all women owned co-op.
Yeah. Which
is where the name comes from. Yeah. Spanish speakers probably know that just by the name of it.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's been some crazy past few days. Everything going on with George Floyd and the circumstances there in Minneapolis have spurred a lot of conversation. Yes. And as we were talking about it, we had that conversation of when exactly is it important for business to say something? Is it important for business to say something? Is it the people of the business who should say something, or is it the business themselves who should jump in and say something? So that's what we're going to talk about today. We don't have the answer by any stretch. We're just going to open up the conversation and share some of our thoughts about it.
We're winging it here. You're on camera having the conversation with us at the same time we talk through some of these things. Yeah.
So forgive us if it's a little bit less planned than our past videos have been, but we thought it was important to kind of just speak from the heart on this one.
Yeah. And we would love input from you guys, what your thoughts are on the role of businesses and how they speak into current events or social justice things that are happening in the world.
Yeah. So I guess we should start by sharing our thoughts behind who Vagrant is and how we wanted to show up in these situations. Because we've talked about this. We've talked about how we wanted to be a company that focuses on the quality of our product and not use any sort of crutch. We talked about how we didn't want to be a social justice enterprise. And we didn't want to jump on the bandwagon of a specific issue and say like, oh, this is the big one. This is the one that matters. We wanted to be all about the quality of our product.
Right.
And it wasn't that we didn't have things that we could jump on board with.
Right.
We know shops and people who do those things really well. But we had decided we wanted to be somewhat neutral. We often
as a company. Yeah. And that doesn't mean that personally speaking, we don't have issues that we care about.
Right. But we want our company to be what we call Switzerland. Yes. We want to be neutral on these things while taking our personal lives outside of the company and promoting or jumping on board with any social initiatives that we care about. But then we come to this situation now where we began to ask ourselves, and we thought that we would share, what exactly should a business do in these situations? Should a business share? Should we as people take opportunities like this to jump into that space and push our businesses into that space? And then what does that make you look like? Does it look like you're using this as a marketing opportunity to, capitalize on people's pain and suffering, or can you just share genuine concern?
Right. There's the balance, right, of using a terrible situation like what's happening right now for marketing purposes, which is the opposite of what we would ever want to do. But at the same time, I think we get a platform that's different than a lot of other people do. And how do we best use that platform?
Yeah.
And how do we balance that? Those are kind of the two sides of the coin that we struggle with, like, navigating.
Yeah.
And I'm not even sure that we've picked the best route. And so we're just kind of talking through these things and trying to figure out, what does Vagrant do as a company? What do we do as individuals that happen to own this company?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been a conversation that's been on the forefront for the last couple of days.
I guess the reality of this situation is we weren't born, a day before we launched Vagrant.
Right.
We had full lives and lots of stories and lots of experiences and lots of things that have shaped us into who we are, that we brought and we continue to bring into how we want the company to run. And those aren't things that we've made public. Right. Things that we care about, things that we feel, things that we've experienced in the world. But they've influenced how we do what we do. And it's getting tricky and difficult to figure out, like, okay, what's the next step here? How do we approach this? And we thought, this particular instance was something that we both cared about a lot. And it kind of spurred this idea of, like, what should a business do?
Yeah.
And it's been difficult. So here in Baltimore, our stores are in, like, highly trafficked areas.
Right.
And that in this current climate is generally where a lot of protests happen. And sometimes those protests get a little unruly and out of hand due to lots of different factors. And then it makes you think a bit, like, what do we do now? Like, do we say something? Do we not? Do we risk getting, something negative happen? Do we risk, like, stores getting broken into or looting or just people not coming in? And it's not as cut and dry. It's not as cut and dry as maybe we've thought that it would be. Before we started recording, I know you had said, like, no matter what, somebody's going to get mad. Right.
Right. If you say something, some people will get mad. If you keep silent, other people will get mad. It's a challenge. There's not a correct answer where you're going to please everybody. And I think the challenge for me and you so far has been how do we apply the things that we care about personally, and how do we speak as a business? Should we speak as a business? I mean, I even think about our employees. Our employees come from such a wide variety of backgrounds and care about such vastly different things.
Our staff is very diverse. They're diverse in age. They're diverse in ethnicity, gender diversity. Like, we have an extremely diverse staff.
Yeah. And so if we start using Vagrant as the platform for which we speak about the things that we care about, does that pigeonhole and force our employees to feel like they're also having to be a part of that?
Yeah.
And is that a thing that we want to do?
Yeah. And vice versa.
Right.
If a staff member is really passionate about something, but we as a company choose to not, promote that or encourage that, then what does that look like? Does it feel disingenuous? Right. Like, oh, you only care about the things that are important to you. I think that it's kind of different or weird, maybe, because our leadership structure is pretty diverse. Right. We got a lot of different diversity going on in our leaders, and it's tricky. I know it's tricky for me. I've been getting a whole lot of people reaching out over the past few days and saying like, oh, you're the CEO of a black of a coffee company, like let me do what I can to support you. And like I'm not trying to turn business away, but it does make it kind of tricky where it's like, okay, great, I'm glad that you're willing to support black people, and if that's important to you, then by all means buy coffee. But at the same time, we're business, and so it makes it very tricky if something else happens in the world and then you want to run and go support somebody else, because it's not that I don't care about their situation, but that doesn't make us any less of a business. That doesn't mean that my kids need to eat less or what have you, or my employees don't need to have thriving employment opportunities. So it makes it really, really hard to figure out like which direction to go, which thing to chase after, which thing to talk about, which thing to support. It's not as simple as like, you know what? Okay, this matters. I want to talk about it because in some way, shape, or form, you got to have so many more plans than when it's just your personal platform.
Right. And this is definitely a situation that's very important to talk about.
Yeah.
And then it's just figuring out how to do that in the best way. We don't want to come across like we don't care about the situation that's happening. That's obviously not the case.
Yeah.
And at the same time, we don't want to use it as an opportunity for us to personally profit more and use it as advertising for our business. Like, we don't want a tragic situation to be used to further our bank account.
Right.
For disingenuous reasons.
And yet at the same time, a lot of people are looking to support.
Right. And
sometimes that support comes in, the form of purchasing. And so it's not that we are saying like, okay, let's capitalize on this opportunity. Let's get our name out there and say like, oh, Josh is black, so let's plaster that all over that. You want to support black people, go support Vagrant. I mean, cool if that's your thing, but like that's not our intention. Like that's not what we want to be about. And I was thinking through like all the different things that we could claim. And there's tons of businesses out there that do that. Businesses that say like, oh, we support this community, we support educating and giving jobs to the homeless or foster care or whatever. And all those things are really, really good things. Right. And we just decided we're not going to be one of those,
right?
At least not publicly. That doesn't mean that we don't have things going on behind closed doors, though.
Right.
Like we've supported a lot of different things that we just haven't told people that that's what we're doing. We just kind of do it in a sneaky fashion. We don't publicize it. We don't announce it. We just go do it. And I think that has been kind of tricky also in the past, because some people have said like, oh, well, you guys don't support anything. Right. You don't throw a bone anybody's way. You don't give anybody free coffee. And it's like, oh, we've given away thousands of dollars of free coffee, but we didn't think that we needed to share that because we wanted to support whatever that initiative was. Which is, I guess, our prerogative to do as business owners. We say that's important to us. We're going to throw some attention that way. We're going to support people in that way. But we don't need to blast that everywhere.
Right.
But I don't know. Maybe there's a detriment there. Maybe people want to see that we care. And there's a medium ground. I don't. Yeah. Maybe.
Yeah, that's the tricky thing. I think for people that know us personally, I think it's pretty fair to say that they know that we care about things in general. Broadly speaking, we tend to care about things. Yeah. I think because we're attempting to grow this business bigger than our backyard, and even already with the online store, and we're sending coffee all over the US now, people aren't going to know us personally nearly as often going forward.
Yeah.
And so that's something that we have to navigate. If you don't know us personally and you don't know we care, how do we show that? And how do we show that without without the identity of Vagrant taking on its own personhood, for lack of a better term.
Yeah. And it's, I think it's hard because it's not that, like, we do this intentionally. It's not because we have so uneventful lives that we're like, oh, there's really nothing that we can claim. That's not the case. We both come from extremely interesting lives and circumstances and families, and like there's all the things mixed into our lives. There's helping homeless people and letting them move in with us. There's foster care and being a part of people's lives. There's adoption, and there's military, and there's minority. Like all of it, we could claim so many things.
Right.
It's we could, and we choose not to.
Right.
And we do that with intention.
Yeah.
Because for us, we started looking around at lots of different companies, and we said, all these companies, they use these other platforms to further their brand, and you know what, that's good for them. But we wanted to establish ourselves as an actual legitimate, solid coffee roaster who could do coffee really well. And if we use some other social initiative, it could cloud that. And then people would think like, oh, I'm buying this to support them because of this. And that's just not the space we wanted to be in.
Right.
We wanted to be in the highly competitive, top tier, really solid coffee roasting community. That's where we want to be.
Right.
And anything other than that, we felt would take us away from that. But it wasn't because we didn't care. And it wasn't because we didn't have something that we could do. We have all the things.
Right. And even that makes it challenging. Like if we decide to use this platform to speak on the events that are happening right now, when something else happens, if we decide not to speak on it, the fact that we're a company that speaks on things now, and then there's something that we don't speak on, then that's a negative light.
Yeah. And
it almost makes it to the point where if you're going to speak on one thing, you have to speak on everything.
It has like a snowball effect.
Right.
Where it's just going to grow. And then next week we're talking about another thing and another thing and another thing and another thing. Right. And
which could all be very, very important things.
They very well could be. And who knows? Maybe something will happen in the world where next week we are talking about something because it's that important. But I guess as we began to think through this, we're having the conversation, and we're having the conversation now still about like, okay, well, what then do we say? Do we say anything? Do we say something? When do we say something? How do we say something? Is this a personal thing that we just share from our personal lives, or is it something for the business? And then what do we tell our employees, and how do we check in with them? And we were having the conversation about like, what exactly does this mean? The concept and the idea of protests sometimes can be exciting, and sometimes they can be scary. And when you have a bunch of people on your team who have different experiences in life, you have to manage and navigate those. Right. It's not as simple as like, well, this is what we're going to do and this is what we stand for. Deal. Yeah. Because maybe some people aren't there, and maybe they can't deal. Or maybe they have differences of opinion. But no matter what, you got to figure out something. You got to either choose to say something, or you can choose to say nothing. And then if you do either of those, you got to figure out where those are going to go.
Right. Yeah, I feel like so often this conversation gets boiled down to black and white, and not like race. Like, there's A and there's B and there's nothing else. And it's, the conversation is so much more nuanced. And there's so many factors to take into account. And I think that I don't know that there's a right answer and a wrong answer. I don't want to say the protesting obviously is an important part of making changes happen. But at the same time, we have to worry about an employee that's here by themselves in a part of town that, if protesting and rioting and looting happens, very possibly will happen in this neighborhood.
Yeah, for sure.
And so how do we keep our employees safe while saying, yeah, we agree that protesting is important? Like, there's something to protest.
Yeah.
So I don't know that there's a right and a wrong answer. And one thing I've definitely realized more and more is that a lot of people and a lot of companies get judged when people aren't taking into account the full range of variables in the situation.
And then also there's the level of your customer,
right.
Which is another piece that you got to factor in. Like, what exactly is your customer, your regular? What are they gonna say? What are they gonna feel? What do they expect your corporate social responsibility to be? Right. I know a time when there was an attempted break-in at the store before, where a customer said, like, oh, what happened? And I explained, like, oh, well, somebody tried to break in. They didn't get in, but, that's what happened. And they said, oh, like, that's so sad. I really hope they hurt themselves. And I remember thinking, like, why? Why do you hope they hurt themselves? Like, what good does that do? Like, we have insurance and they didn't get in. Why do we need to exacerbate that issue with now somebody's hurting? And that, I say that just to say, like, that's a regular customer who comes in who feels that way about something like this.
Right.
And me, I feel differently about it, where I think, like, you know what? I get it. If you're in a hard place and you feel like this is the best decision for your life to try to break into some place and steal something, I guess, right. You might do something like this. We've taken the appropriate measures to make that very, very difficult. And so it's not a scary thing and it's not a discomforting thing. It's just like, okay, well, I guess now we got to file that insurance claim and get this thing fixed.
Right.
And that has an effect, though, on how that customer sees your business and how they feel about you and whether they're going to come back and whether they're feeling safe, and like all those layers are still existing.
Right. And even just the varied backgrounds of the customers that we have. I feel like as in the customer service industry, I feel like to some extent it's our job to let people be heard without preaching at them.
Yeah.
And that's another fine line to draw, because there's people that have wrong opinions. I'm not saying there aren't wrong opinions. And there is times that it's so egregious that it needs to be addressed on the spot. But we're not here to be the morality police.
Right. We're not here to be any police.
We're here, right. We're here to wake people up, get them fueled for the day, and hopefully set them off on the right foot.
Yeah.
And with the variety of customers that we have walking through our door, we can't put that on our staff to address every comment that might not fall in line with how we think or what we believe in.
Yeah. Or even like what is a concern for us or what isn't.
Right.
Which is, I think, a thing that you have to factor in to being a business owner. One of the, like we talked about in the beginning, when we started the company with the idea of doing special events and we built out our equipment, we didn't factor in people not being strong enough to pick it up.
Right.
And that just, it was like a obvious thing when we hired somebody and they couldn't do it.
Right.
And in the same way, it's things like this, where it's like we didn't factor in things like protests or potential riots and how people will be able to do those.
Right.
In so many ways, our lives and our experiences have made it so we're different than a lot of our employees. I know, like for me, after 8 years in the Marine Corps and 3 years in private security, you're not going to scare me the same with threats of violence. That's a whole topic for a different day, but that doesn't mean that that's not going to be like incapacitatingly like terrifying for someone else. And you can't just go with like, well, this isn't a big deal for me, so this can't be a big deal for you. In any situation, whether that's like, well, the police didn't beat me up or any of my people up, so therefore you don't have to worry about it for you. And like whatever it is, you have to be cognizant of others.
Yes.
And what their experiences are and what they're thinking, and not just about your own circumstance. And I think that in the end, I think that is the piece that is the troubling piece, where it's like, I don't know the answer in any of this. I don't know, like, should you support Vagrant because if it's X, Y, and Z criteria for you? Maybe, but that doesn't mean that you have to. And that doesn't mean that we're saying like, oh, everybody should, stop going to Starbucks and come to Vagrant because we meet this, and this criteria. I'm not saying that. I'm saying, like, this is a very difficult and nuanced and complicated scenario for everyone.
Right.
And we want to do our part, and we want to love people, and we want to give them coffee and help them accomplish whatever their goal is.
Right.
That's what we want to do. But how do we do that well? I don't know.
Yeah.
On this one, I don't know.
So that's a lot of talking to say, I don't know. We really do want to hear from you guys. Like we want to keep this conversation going.
Yeah.
Josh and I will continue to talk about this. We'll continue to talk about this with our staff and with our customers oftentimes. But we want to hear from you what you guys think, especially if you're business owners. How do you approach situations like this?
Yeah. So thanks. Thanks for liking, commenting, and subscribing. We want to talk about things like this.
Yeah.
They matter both personally and business wise. These are gonna keep happening, and so there's no point in avoiding the conversation. Even if you don't know what to do, even if you don't know what to say, at least acknowledging, okay, this is one of those times is going to be beneficial. So. Please share your thoughts. Like we want to know. So whatever platform you're watching or listening to this on, let us know. We want to hear what you have to say.
Hopefully this off the hip production of the HustleCast wasn't too painful to listen to.
Yeah.
We'll be more together and thought out next week.
Yeah. We got a lot of good stuff coming. We'll see you guys next time.
See ya. Hey everybody, it's Josh and Jared with the Vagrant Coffee HustleCast.
Tune in every Tuesday for new content at vagrantcoffee.com.
Please like, share, and subscribe.
Drink Vagrant Coffee.
And keep hustling.